One of the classic stereotypes of gamers is our addiction to our hobby. But it takes two to tango, and games have long since mastered the art of the one more try mentality. Now, admittedly, that idea has been abused in recent years with predatory microtransactions and grinds, and so for this list, we're looking at the good kind of video game addiction, where clever game design and specific appeal are all a game needs to keep you coming back for more. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are the 10 most severely addictive video games of the last 10 years. Number 10, Elden Ring. Applying the Soulsborne formula to a true open-world game was a stroke of genius, as Elden Ring is one of the undisputed kings of just one more try. The Lands Between is one of the more fleshed out and fully realized worlds in gaming history, where every stretch of land, every abandoned shack, and every babbling weirdo you find in a cave tells the story of this murdered world. Elden Ring understands, like the other open world games on this list, that one of the best ways to keep people coming back for more is to subtly clue them in that there is indeed more out there, and make them care about the prospect of finding it. And if there happens to be an obstacle in the way, say like a giant nightmare creature that one-shots you, then all the better. Now the player is curious. Now they want to get stronger so they can see what's so damned important to have an eldritch abomination acting as a bouncer. And thus the rest of the game is explored and more secrets are uncovered and more bosses are encountered, and with that, the player is hooked. And all without nickel and diming them at every turn. Funny that, isn't it? Number 9. Fortnite. The biggest battle royale game on the planet, Fortnite is likely completely inescapable for you, especially if you have a kid. Through a clever mix of marketing that ensures that it's never out of the community conversation for very long, as well as just being a fun, solidly built game in its own right, Fortnite has dominated an entire generation of gamers. Unlike other battle royale games that get a bit stagnant, looking at you, Warzone 2, Fortnite constantly evolves itself, switching engines, blowing up the map, adding new game modes, among so much more. Likewise, its aggressive marketing deals means that it's essentially the biggest crossover event in gaming. And if you like, well, any media, which I guess you do if you're watching this, Fortnite will have a new character or themed event that crosses over with something you love. Seriously, everything from John Wick to Dragon Ball Z to the MCU to Resident Evil has been in Fortnite at one point. The only thing keeping it under other free-to-play games on this list is that Fortnite isn't nearly as subtle about its microtransactions as the next entry. Number 8, Rocket League. Not only is Rocket League fun as all hell, turning the inherent joy in watching RC cars fly off to Kingdom Come when they drive headfirst into each other into an actual sport, but it's one of the precious few free-to-play games out there with microtransactions that aren't predatory. Oh, there are microtransactions, of course, don't get me wrong, but they're out of the way enough that you don't feel pressured, and they're all purely cosmetic. Since the game is based purely on player skill and team coordination, it would be impossible for developers Psyonix to implement more game-affecting microtransactions without fundamentally altering what people like about Rocket League. And what people like about Rocket League is just how amazing it feels to play. There's something so satisfying about going top speed, zooming past other lightning-fast cars as you slam headfirst into a cartoonishly large ball, in an addicting mixture of bumper cars and football. Losing control and missing that shot never feels as frustrating as it would in other games, for the same reason it was so fun watching your character get thrown around in early 2000s action games that just discovered ragdoll physics. That's because it's always objectively hilarious. Well, unless it's your mate doing it and costing you the match, of course. Number 7, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It took about half a decade for a game company to take what Skyrim built and truly perfect it, but those mad lads at Nintendo truly pulled it off. Like with Skyrim, what sucks you into Breath of the Wild is its atmosphere. You feel how old Hyrule is, how vast and ancient and dangerous this land you're traversing has become in the 100 years Link has spent asleep. But in Breath of the Wild, that's just the hook. Whereas what keeps folks not only coming back, but hyper-focusing on it for months on end, is the experimentation of the game's controls. There are very few objectives in Breath of the Wild that can only be solved one way, while everything else you need to do can be solved however the hell you want. The only limits are how much you can bend Link's poor skeleton until it breaks, as the Sheikah Slate opens the entire game up for experimenting with the game's physics engine to see what you can come up with, making the title pretty much endlessly replayable. Number 6, Fallout 4. Fallout 4 seems tailor-made to be the most addictive Fallout game ever made. From the weapon upgrades to the settlement building to the fun, wickedly smooth and responsive combat, Fallout 4 will eat up all of your free time if you let it. With a dense open world to get lost in, there's always something around the corner, a new settlement to find or item to craft. And that's not to mention all the DLC the game got to expand the experience even further. And like any self-respecting Bethesda game, the modding is where this game really grabs you by the brain. Because of the superior engine compared to 3 in New Vegas, the mods of Fallout 4 are phenomenal and are the true draw of this sequel, at least in the long term. Now, does that mean it's the best Fallout game? Absolutely not. I mean, have you played Fallout New Vegas? But it is still an awesome one, and one that will eat a whole load of your time. Number 5, Among Us. Among Us kind of floundered when it first came out, being a game that required multiple people being at their computers on a conference call with hours of free time between them. It wasn't until 2020, when the pandemic hit, that became something that a lot of us could actually do more than once in a blue moon. And with all this time suddenly on our hands, players soon learned that Among Us is one of the best Steam games of the last decade. What makes the title so addicting is the sheer variety contained within its simple premise. It's just you and your friends, or maybe some strangers, on a spaceship. One of them is a vicious killer picking you off one by one, and you gotta find a way to catch the friend playing the monster in a lie, while that player has to divert blame while covering their own arse. There's just so many ways this game can play out even when you're playing with the same people. That no wonder the minute people actually had some free time, it basically took over the streaming world overnight. Number 4, Pokemon Go. Some of you out there might not say that Pokemon Go is even a proper video game, but like Wii Sports before it, this mobile ARG managed to attract the attention of hardcore gamers as well as people who don't even own a console, but have always dreamed of becoming a Pokemon master. The simplistic gameplay loop of catching Pokemon, evolving them, and, if you're daring, taking over gyms meant that Pokemon Go rewarded you for pretty much everything. Even better, it encouraged you to get out into the real world, tracking down rare Pokemon while on your travels. The social element was surprisingly effective too, and at its peak, you'd often find real strangers becoming friends while lingering in a particularly lucrative real-world spot. Pokemon Go, love it or hate it, really was a unique phenomenon, and its huge reach and addictive formula meant that people were constantly booting it up, whether at home, work, or at school. Number 3, Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV will consume your life, there's no debate about that. Now, it used to be that World of Warcraft was the most addicting MMO out there, but in the last decade, that title has been thoroughly claimed by Square Enix's embarrassment turned cash cow, Final Fantasy XIV. Now, hold your horses for a second before you rush to the comments. While the original build of this game, of course, came out before 2013, this version absolutely does not count anymore, as neither 1.0 nor even really A Realm Reborn is responsible for the game becoming the social, life-consuming, all-encompassing experience that robs you of your ability to talk or even think about anything else that it is. What makes the game so addicting is that, ironically, it kind of 100% respects your time. There are very few timed events, and those that do exist don't have anything that you absolutely need in order to progress in the game, at most giving you an emote or a vehicle. The online store as well is so out of your way that some players actually have trouble finding it, and when you do find it, everything there, again, is purely cosmetic, meaning that you really don't have to pay anything more than the $15 subscription fee to play the game. Add on to that the perfection of the WoW gameplay formula, one of the best storylines in the Final Fantasy canon, dungeons that put all other MMO dungeons to shame, and you get a game that is low-key one of the most impressive of the last decade. Number 2, Animal Crossing New Horizons. This game is one of the only reasons a lot of us got through 2020 without going completely nutty. Animal Crossing has always been addicting, there's no two ways about it. But a New Leaf found a way to make the series truly inescapable by giving the player real responsibility via making them the mayor rather than just being another resident. New Horizons, though, takes this to a whole different level by giving the player an entire island to cultivate, populate with villagers, and build a community from the ground up. And the way the game breaks all of that up into 100 tiny little tasks makes an otherwise daunting goal far more manageable, keeping the player engaged even further. The best part is how the game accomplishes all of this while asking nothing from you but your time. So many games are designed to be as addictive as possible because they want you spending money, getting caught up in their ecosystem and economy. Now, New Horizons has an economy and an ecosystem, but it's one designed around player choice and a sense of real progression, not one that just wants 20 quid for new skins in a battle pass. Number 1. GTA 5. Rockstar's main reason for trotting this game out for every single generation instead of actually making a new one may be primarily money-based, but that would only keep happening so long as folks kept buying it. And like clockwork, we always do, and for good reason. GTA 5 is still one of the most intricately detailed worlds in gaming history, a title that Rockstar has spent a decade since its release keeping up on with every re-release. A bit more polish, a bit more to do, a bit more to explore, but never too much to the point of removing what made the original so great, but making sure that a first-time player in 2023 is as impressed as a new player back in 2013. And as you can imagine, this makes the game incredibly hard to put down. Simply driving around is so atmospheric and intuitive that you fall into a kind of trance, with the radio or your favorite podcast playing in the background as you cruise through the winding mountain paths outside of Los Santos. And when you do finally follow the story, the heist missions are some of the most fun you'll ever have in a sandbox game. There's an activity for everyone in the streets of Los Santos, and it's very easy for the time to just kind of melt away. And what's even more impressive is that I've only been talking about the single player here. This is not even talking about GTA Online, which will just extend your stay more. So that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. What do you think about these video games, and are there any more addicting ones you would have put on here? Let me know, and while you're down there, if you could, please give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to WhatCulture Gaming for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.